Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene went viral. Right Wing Watch found this video. Here she is talking about the idea of COVID passports.
They want you to be required to have something called a COVID passport. And this would mandate your ability to be able to travel, your ability to be able to go to events, your ability to be able to buy and sell. And I asked the question earlier today, is this something like Biden's mark of the beast? Because that is really disturbing and not good. Oh, if you're going to come into the football game or the baseball game or the concert, you need your vaccine passport because we're trying to do a good job to keep everyone safe. This is what the Biden administration is trying to talk to these private companies into doing. Well, let's analyze that. You see, it's still the same thing. It's still fascism or communism, whatever you want to call it, but it's coming from private companies. So I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
So it's both fascism and communism, but it's corporate communism. God, these people are annoying. Let me just take words that I think sound really bad and really scary and just say them, and that'll be my explanation. This is fascism. This is communism. Shut the fuck up. She's probably never read a political definition in her life. It's Biden's mark of the beast. Oh, great. So we have ridiculous political terminology you're using to define it, and also now it's from Satan, it's from the devil, it's Biden's mark of the beast, which is this biblical thing. Fucking hyperbolic drama queen shit much? Yeah, I think so. So the first response is simple. If companies were to start mandating COVID vaccines to go do shit, you know what that would be called? Capitalism. A free marketplace. That's what that would be called. It would be companies deciding on their own to implement a policy. That is what you argue for in every other context. When the government wants to step in and regulate, say, hey, you can't do child labor, hey, you can't pollute like that, conservatives, generally, especially the elected conservatives, say, no, I've been bribed by said corporation, so I'm on their side, and I think they should be able to pollute, and I think they should be able to use child labor, and I'm against government intervention in the free marketplace. Well, in the scenario that she's describing, that would be the free marketplace. That would be the individual companies deciding we'd feel safer if people had the COVID vaccine to come into our stores, so that's what we're going to demand. So, in other words, it's her own ideology, and there's an outcome attached to it that she doesn't like. What she would want, really, is like the federal government to mandate that companies cannot demand COVID vaccines to have service, which would be a form of regulation, just a form of regulation in the direction that she prefers. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this. That shit ain't going to happen. You're not going to have, you need a COVID vaccine to get into whatever, fill in the blank with any store. Any store, you think all the stores out there are going to be like, you need a COVID vaccine? No, because they want business, and there's going to be plenty of people who don't get the COVID vaccine, and so they're not going to rule out. Like, will there be the occasional business or gathering or whatever that say, yes, you need a COVID vaccine to come in? Sure, absolutely. But is it going to be widespread where it's like everything in the economy? No, it's not. It's not going to be that. And beyond that, this idea, now I don't have a position on the COVID passports, if I'm being honest with you guys. I haven't really thought much about it. But the idea that this is also some sort of new thing, the passport idea specifically, I really don't think all the individual companies are going to decide on their own that everybody needs a vaccine to come into their store. If you have a mask, that'll suffice. You know what I mean? Like mask, social distancing, they'll let you get away with that. You don't need the vaccine. But for COVID passports, guys, when immigrants come into this country, they need to get their vaccines. It's mandatory that they get their vaccines. Would Marjorie Taylor Greene be on the side of eliminating that regulation and that requirement for immigrants to this country? I don't think she would. You want to know why? Because if they were to change that and allow them in without the vaccines, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene would say, look at these dirty immigrants coming here and spreading diseases. They don't even have to get their vaccines when they come here. Now, I'm speculating. That's my guess as to what she would say. But I think that's a pretty solid guess as to what she would say. So immigrants are already required to have vaccines when they come to this country. The other thing is, in a lot of schools across the country, for public schools, it's mandatory the kids get the vaccine before they go to public schools. Because it's a public health issue. It's a regulation issue. So now listen again, you could agree or disagree with that. You could take, individual freedom, liberty grounds and say, no, the government should never be able to tell me what I want to put in my body or not. If you want to make that argument, make that argument. But this idea that this whole new concept is unusual and new and wild, I don't really think that's true. So yeah, some other countries are like, we're opening up to travel and to tourists and to citizens, but you got to have your vaccine to come in here. Are you really going to blame another country for making that decision? Are you really going to blame them when we also mandate that immigrants have vaccines? When we also mandate that kids that go to schools have vaccines? I mean, listen, at the end of the day, the real conversation comes down to, are the vaccines good or bad? And I think a lot of far-right conservatives think, no, it's not good. And even a lot of lefties think, no, it's not good because they don't trust Big Pharma. Now, I think there's good reason not to trust Big Pharma, but I also think antibiotics work. And I also think modern medicine largely nails it. And I also think the vaccines work. We basically, what do we eliminate? Polio, I think we nearly eliminated. There's a bunch of stuff because of the vaccines. So if you agree, if you realize that the vaccines do work, then yeah, you want to get as many people vaccinated as humanly possible. And I get it. Go talk to an older African-American and talk about the Tuskegee experiments. And yes, the idea, it really is a gross line to just allow the government to forcibly put stuff in your body. I get it. There are freedom concerns and whatnot, but when it comes to the vaccines in particular, I mean, they're good and they work. And the type of regulation that we're talking about with COVID passports, agree or disagree with it, it's not crazy. It's certainly not a crazy idea. We have mandatory vaccines for immigrants, mandatory vaccines for kids in schools. I don't think the private companies are all going to decide you need the vaccine. I think they'll be fine with masks and stuff like that. But it's certainly not both fascism and communism and corporate communism and every other negative word that she thinks she can think of.